like to call the Public Safety Committee meeting for August to order, please. 911 first.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I have a resolution request to extend the FY22 domestic terrorism prevention grant for an amount of $172,413.
I'll move it. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried.
Agency data for July, we dispatched 1,424 EMS agencies, 520 fire agencies, 2,060 police polls, 459 public service calls. That's all I have.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
Director Harrison, how are you?
Good afternoon. I don't have any requests. There's one typo on there. Task-oriented activity should be 11 instead of 1. But, no requests. Yeah. Answer the questions. Yeah.
Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Fire.
A quick one.
Hi there, I just got nothing but the agency, the data year to date and responses. Unless somebody's got something burning question with his pants to get away from.
Quite a phrase.
Question?
Burning questions, huh?
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You're gonna beat it.
District Attorney. Didn't know you were coming. Welcome.
Well, thank you. This is authorization, a request to accept the H prosecution grant funds.
Move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See, you put grant in there, it goes really quick. You're lucky you got the word grant out. If Ray was here, you wouldn't.
This is where it slows down.
Yeah.
Sheriff.
Excuse my time trying to match former sheriff. We're coordinating in the morning.
Yes.
First, authorization to amend resolution 279/2024. That's just to add Quest R3, the BOCES to the school resource deputy contract.
Move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried.
Second one, to accept the grant in the amount of 230.
Second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
So
So
quicker than
carried.
you think. Resolution to authorize the purchase of 3 Chevy Tahoes. That's from the last authorized vehicle inventory that we had an issue with getting the purchasing squared away. So
I'll move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So carried.
authorization for a sheriff's house vehicle declared surplus.
Move it.
2010 Chevy
Second.
Tahoe.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried.
Authorization to award the bid to police vehicle upfitting to Cruisers Division for 1 year commencing on 10/1/24.
Move it.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So carried.
I just add that's the lowest bidder, by the way.
Thanks.
The Ada County Jail report, an individual report. Dutchess County for the month of July received $6,390. Franklin County, $5,580. Greene County, $9,990. July's total, $21,060. Year to date, $117,690. Down from the previous year, which was $237,340.
Questions?
If we could go back to the one resolution, the grant for 230,000, I just want to give the sheriff kudos because he had come to us about the fact that their supplier was no longer in business anymore and they had no support for the in-car computers. And we sort of said, let's get creative, and we appreciate the fact that you found a grant to be able to fund it.
Taken by surprise, we contacted the company Data 911 for some service and, we couldn't get a response, only to find out they had gone out of business and not told anyone several months before that, so, it was a surprise for us as well. Yeah, great doing business with them. So, there was the security services statistics, for 2024. I don't know if, you got that, Kelly, or not.
No, it didn't get sent over.
I'll be happy to leave a copy with the chairman if you would like, and then, put that.
I'll scan it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sure. Public defender. Good evening, how are you?
Well, I have three resolution requests. First, to accept a grant award for the second statewide expansion of Burrell Herring in the amount of $5,223,095.
Move it.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So carried.
Second one is permission to enter into a contract with Repeat Business Systems for a lease for 2 printers. It's a 5-year lease, $231 a month.
I'll move it.
Second. All in favor? Opposed? So carried.
And then lastly, resolution request seeking authorization from the chairman of the board supervisor for a maintenance agreement on a printer that we have at the Hudson City Quarter. It's Hudson Valley Office Equipment Inc. And it's for 1-year period. And I apologize, the amount didn't make it into the resolution. It's $480 for the year.
I'll move it. Second.
All in favor? Opposed? So carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was,
Okay. Okay, local law animal abuse registry.
evening, thanks for having us. Some of the concerns that were raised at the full board, if I could briefly address some of them.
Sure.
One was, there was a concern that the proposed law did not include farm animals. In a way, it does. The definition of a companion animal or pet is a dog or cat or any other domesticated animal normally maintained in or near the household of the owner or person who cares for such domesticated animal. So your backyard pet horse, your pot-bellied pig, your pet goat, those would be covered as companion animals. However, the commercial animals like dairy cows, chickens for their eggs, sheep for their fleece, racehorses, any animal that they call is commercial or for subsistence purposes, are not covered as companion animals because they really aren't. So those are the farm animals that wouldn't be covered by the registry. And another reason for that is because those types of animals aren't obtained through rescues or shelters. They're purchased from auctions or other farmers who aren't required to check the registry. So putting them on the registry, there would be no benefit. Their abuse is covered under Ag and Markets law. Now, they wouldn't come under the registry for that reason.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Mhm.
So there's a place that says this, okay, under section 7.
Mhm.
This section shall not apply to farm animals for farmers. But then it defines farm animal as hoofed animals. So it seems like there's a contradiction. I'm just trying to understand the legality of what you're proposing.
I did run that by Chris, and he agreed with my thinking, and that's where I came up with the, a little bit more about the definitions. The definition of farm animal is any ungulate, which is a hoofed animal, poultry, species of cattle, sheep, swine, goats, llamas, horses, or fur-bearing animals, as defined in the environmental conservation law, which are raised for commercial or subsistence purposes. So it covers all of those, commercial animals that I mentioned. Does that answer your question?
So it's basically the difference is if someone has a horse
Mhm.
for non-commercial reasons, it would be covered. But if someone has a horse for commercial reasons, it would
Yes.
not be covered. So, yeah, so like my point at the last when we discussed it at the previous public safety meeting, there was an example of a horse farm in Greene County.
Mhm.
I don't really know if that specific horse was for commercial reasons. I just saw the headline that it was a horse farm. So there was an argument that we needed this policy because to prevent something like the abuse of a horse at a horse farm in Greene County. And my point was that this law would not cover that because that was a horse on a horse farm. I'm just assuming that the use of the word farm would mean that it was for commercial purposes, in which case that horse would not be covered according to this law.
No, not
It'd be
necessarily.
up to the DAs.
The DA would determine where this definition fit as far as,
What's the charges?
the charges. So if it was, again, any other domesticated animal normally maintained in or near the household of the owner or person who cares for such domesticated animal. We had horses in our backyard all the time. They would be covered as a companion animal or pet. I know
Or like
some-
a retired racehorse at the
Yeah.
farm that they were keeping.
they're not generating any income. They're not being raised because they're racehorses and they're gonna make money racing, or they're not being raised for, to be sold as racehorses. And the same thing with cows, or I know somebody has a pot-bellied pig. No
I
commercial
always
on
use the
that.
example of Holly Tanner, who has a horse, a cow,
Mhm.
and goats, and they're all companion
Yes,
animals.
right, literally,
Right, right, right.
exactly. Yeah, and that shouldn't be a hard argument to,
Right.
to prove.
I was just thinking, I was just noticing the headline called it a horse farm. So I was just assuming that the horses
Yeah.
were there for ostensibly commercial reasons.
You can blame that on me, I pointed that out.
Okay.
And again, that would depend on whether or not the horses are there for income purposes and if they're,
Exactly.
and that would be fall under the DA's privy to determine that,
Yes.
whether it fall under the violation of the ag markets law or this registry.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. Any other questions about those definitions? Yeah, actually, it was mentioned that Greene County's animal abuse law didn't prevent a recent horse abuse case there.
Need a Phillips head screwdriver, looks like that.
Kippy, is that you?
I am on.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
but you can't talk.
Be quiet.
I don't want to mute you.
I figured it out, okay? I figured it out.
You're on. We're good.
I-
Keep listening.
It's the phone number, right?
The Animal Abuse Registry does not prevent a first offense. The first offense on the registry, the idea is that it'll prevent the next abuse if they're not adopted, if no more pets are adopted to them.
Yeah, because that came
so-
up that it's not, it doesn't prevent, obviously, the first
Right.
one. Makes sense. And then we fixed contact. That was.
Yes.
And,
And the
to
heading of section 6 was changed with the DA's help to prohibition on, it was prohibition on contact with animals. We changed that to prohibition on ownership, possession, or custody of companion animals or pets. So we took that word contact out. There was also someone mentioned that, someone could say that's not me in the registry, it's somebody who has the same name as I do. Their picture is part of the registry, so they can't say it's not them, it's their picture.
Date of birth, all that.
Yes. Sheriff's phone number was corrected. That was the easiest one. There was mention about the ASPCA's position, that these laws aren't effective, and it mentioned that there should be, made effective use of well-enforced no-contact orders, making use of provisions to include animals and domestic violence protection orders. Those are things that the ASPCA said that should be done instead of. But the DA has said that those measures can and should be done in addition to putting somebody in the registry. It's not one or the other. It can be both. So I think those were all of the concerns that were raised at the full board meeting, and I didn't feel that any of them required any change to the law as proposed, except for the heading and the sheriff's phone.
I know that, from my recollection of the meeting, that, those issues were minor. And I had heard people say that if they were corrected, that they would support this. So.
Are there any other, hang on one second. Are there any other questions from the committee?
I have a couple more questions. So since that last meeting, and I think maybe many of us have gotten an email from like a trade industry group that represents places like Petco and PetSmart and also breeders and things like that. And I talked to her and she said that like for the industry that sells pets, they have a concern about the sort of fine and the placing of the burden on the pet dealers. And that's the sort of risk of either that hurts businesses and also expressed some concern that it might be hard to train a bunch of employees. I've never worked in a pet company, and I don't know what it's like to sort of like run these these organizations that sort of span multiple counties. And she directed me towards an Ulster County law as an alternative, which basically didn't have that clause of like punishing pet dealers. Just her proposal that you could just remove that section of the law.
The one thing I found, I did review the Ulster County law.
Yeah.
Is that there were a lot of gaps in it, where this particular law sort of covers, there's no question. I mean, Ulster County, it left some of it to people's imagination, I think, because it didn't address it at all. So, and I mean, I think Rob actually has an answer. You were talking.
Well, I just think that there's many things that go on presently that we put the onus on a clerk. We'll call that person a clerk, or a person working in a store. Buy cigarettes in a supermarket, buy beer in a
Ammunition,
grocery
look
store.
what you have to go through now to buy ammunition.
Buy cough medicine. In the restaurant business, I have people that are 18, okay, a little younger, older than maybe what we're thinking, but if they serve alcohol to an individual and that person goes and kills somebody, God forbid, that individual is responsible, including myself. So, I mean, the onus has to be on somebody, and I understand your point, but I thought about that for a moment, and then, it happens in many other instances, so.
It's one extra step in the clerical process. I mean, we do an application. We deny applications for a lot of reasons. This would give us a really good reason to deny an application. You're on the registry. It's against the law for us to adopt you. And the Ulster County law, that section right there is very broad.
Yeah, giving selling and
Anyone.
adopting. So that would go to like backyard breeders
That
too.
doesn't even just restrict it to,
Craigslist.
to rescues and shelters. It says anyone selling, giving away, or adopting an animal to another person must check the Ulster County Animal Abuse Registry. That's more restrictive than ours, which defines who needs to check the registry. That's.
Plus, its first offense is it's basically a buy.
Yeah.
In this law. So, it's like educate that individual, and if it happens again, then that individual.
Right. We have the support of the County Green Humane Society, Animal Kind.
Yeah, and, as I thought about it, the concern about punishing the clerk who failed to do it. There can be plenty of reasons why that might happen, even with someone who is trained. And of course, there's always the discretion in dealing with these cases. And I think that will cover it, especially since both my other concern was that it was creating a burden for the sheriff and the DA's office. And since they both said it's all good, I think that objection should fly.
Absolutely.
So do we have to move this?
One other thing I just wanted to ask about. So when I read the Ulster County law, I noticed that it's a violation instead of a misdemeanor. So like in this draft law, you can go to jail for up to a year. While in Ulster County, you can go to jail for up to 15 days for violating the registry. Which in my mind, violating the registry for 15 days of jail seems more on par with what it is, a violation of registration, as opposed to up to a year. So I guess I'm curious what your reasoning is for making it up to a year, and also I guess if the committee thinks up to a year is the appropriate punishment.
We looked at all the registries in New York State, and we compiled a lot of the information and the requirements that they had. That seemed to be the one that most of them had, those numbers. We didn't make them up.
And they'll also fall back on the DA.
I was gonna say, that will also fall back on the DA and the court system to determine if it's
There could be
first violation.
judicial discretion.
I think there's also the difference. So all violations pretty much in the penal law are 15 days
Right.
or misdemeanors are up to a year, correct? This is an individual that's already been convicted of an animal abuse, so it's not a first-time offender that got a assault charge and they reduce it to a disorderly conduct and then they would then get 15 days. So this is somebody that's been convicted of one of these crimes that are listed in here. I think that's probably why they've made it potentially a misdemeanor as opposed to a violation. So I'm thinking that's the thinking behind it.
I'll move the.
Well, I think there was two more questions.
I'm sorry.
No, I think the sheriff supervisor had a question over here first.
As far as your ambulance or the owners thereof that are exempt, you say it's for sustenance. That gives an exemption, right, from this registry?
It's not, I wouldn't call it an exemption. I would say that they are not defined as an animal covered by it. But they are covered by ag and markets law as far as abuse and neglect and
But
covered in a
technically,
different
let's
way.
say if I owned an ungulate that I wanted to butcher, I could abuse that because it's for my own sustenance.
Not under ag and markets. No.
Not under ag and markets law. No, that's where abuse of those types of animals is covered.
It just wouldn't be covered in the registry.
It wouldn't apply to the registry. How would you have obtained that animal? From an auction maybe?
Believe me, I got a neighborhood you wouldn't. And, law enforcement says, with these ungulates that are transient, itinerant, let's say, that are all over the place, that unless they're in the road, there's nothing can be done. So if I have a situation where I have an owner of quasi-companion animals that aren't butchered or sheared or milked or anything else, and these animals wander all over the neighborhood, endangering pedestrians and vehicles and everything, where do I go from there? Now, is neglect or abuse, can that be in terms of having very lack of robust fencing and therefore your animal become itinerant?
Supervisor, I think there may be some confusion. I know, for 2 decades that I've been in law enforcement, even if we have a breach in the fence and cows get out, we do our due diligence to make sure that we contact the owners and get them corralled as quickly as possible. Obviously, the sheriff's office has no way to transport them. But damage to property other than the owner's property. So if you have cows and they damage your field, well, that's on you. But if they damage someone else's, obviously that's your responsibility as the owner. Also, we don't wait until they wander into the roadway to create an accident to address the issue. I can go back to when we have a Rolodex of farms and check the closest farm to the location of the animal and work our way out. So law enforcement, as far as the sheriff's office, in the last 3 decades has definitely addressed issues of livestock and companion animals, whether it's abuse or just wandering off into a neighbor's yard or field.
I think the DA would have to determine if that was neglect, if that happened over and over.
Sheriff, you had a question?
Yeah, as Supervisor Wolf said, the only thing that would be an issue for us as the sheriff's office would be, I believe it's section 6F. That's how the fine is assessed, or not the fine, but the service charge for the registry. There's no way that we can go through and check everyone's financial record to determine if in fact they're able to pay the $125 service fee to maintain this registry. So I would just ask that just be redacted to reflect same. This is something that the court is going to mandate happen, just like a buccal swab for DNA. And we take no issue on the surcharge, whether it's Echo's Ulster County's $100 surcharge, or if it stays at $125. We're within our working space.
Yeah, or can we say surcharge will be at the discretion of the local court? Leave it at that.
It's either that or it's every person required to register the animal just pays $125 at the time of registration. The next sentence could stay also, all such fees shall be used to help pay the administrative and maintenance costs of maintaining the registry. And then after that, in the event that person, that can just be taken out.
Take that portion out.
Is the committee okay with that?
I'm fine with
I'm
that.
fine with it.
I support that.
Make more sense.
Pay the registration fee. Period.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So I'll make the motion to adopt the local law as amended.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I haven't read the whole law, but I was here at the prior discussion. I have two questions. One is, how does someone get on the registry and what's the process for them to challenge their being placed on the registry short of going to court? Is there an administrative procedure?
They would have already gone to court.
They would have been charged.
They would be convicted?
Yeah. They would have been charged with an animal abuse case and the DA would recommend that they be put on the registry.
And the judge decides?
And a judge would decide, yes.
Okay, and how did you come up with $125? And is it in fact an offset of fees or just a fine that you're imposing? Who's getting that $125 and for what purpose?
That would be, if referring to this, registry would be a registry, that would be the vendors or the rescues or whomever, right? Or would it be the,
No.
No, it goes to the sheriff's office.
it goes to the sheriff's office to offset.
How did you determine that $125 is the appropriate amount to fine someone?
Well,
Then they'll have to pay that.
it's more or less a standard fee. Ulster County charges $100. Like I said, we have no issue with the $100 fee or within our working environment to handle the $100 or $125, obviously $125. You know,
The reason that I raise it is because I work with a lot of indigent people and the court fees and the assessments. Those fees are really onerous on low income people and they add up. So unless you have a need for the $125, how many people are you going to register? I mean,
All those convicted.
how many people are convicted of animal crimes in Columbia County?
well, we'll know after they have to register.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
But,
we don't,
There were records, they're criminal records. I mean, have you looked through the last 20 years? Has anyone been convicted?
Absolutely.
Of
Yes,
crimes?
the number's rather low, but it's gonna take someone to oversee this. It's gonna take the administrative portion of, record keeping and so on and so forth. So, like I said, Georgia County, that area. So we're working within that area as well. And obviously Ulster County, they have a lot more personnel than we have. So,
Right, and my point is, you're not gonna cover your costs with a $125 fee versus it's onerous on people who are low income. So I would just suggest be conscious of that. And if it is not actually going to offset a specific expense, then I say it's a fine, and I would suggest you consider eliminating it.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? The local law passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it's thought to go to. Yes, it passed the public service committee.
Move on board. Thank you.
Any questions from the committee? Questions from the public? Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody.